All right, we should be good. So just wanted to say hello to Alaska Prepper. Thanks for joining me here on the channel. I really appreciate you stopping by and making some time out of your busy schedule to come say hello,
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate you inviting me over. I'm sure we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to let everyone know in the chat, if you are wondering about any questions you might have, or if you have anything you want to ask Alaska Prepper while he's here, please feel free to do so in the live chat, and we'll do our best to kind of get to everybody, I would say a lot of what we do is, try to share advice and experience with everyone to get more prepared. So I know you're no stranger to that. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's my mission. I started doing this because I was always passionate. If you see stuff falling, it's just little seeds from the trees that are falling all over me. But I started prepping long before I started a prepping channel, and I decided to do the prepping channel. Well, I got bored about 3 winters ago, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do a YouTube channel just to show people how to prep, the way that I do it. And so far, it's grown to be what it is, and it's a blessing, really, because the more people, I always said it was not a numbers game, but I changed my mind about halfway through, because the more people that watch, the more people that are at least informed, whether they decide to prep or not, that's really on them, but at least they're informed and they know that being prepared is something that should be priority. Just like having health insurance, just like having car insurance, house insurance, whatever kind of insurance you want. But prepping is having insurance to ensure that your standard of living continues in the middle of a crisis, be it a regional crisis or a systemic crisis. So that's what prepping is. Unfortunately, the word prepping has gotten a bad name, I guess you could say, from previous years. As far as like the shows that depict preppers as being kind of nutty, and kind of like militia type people. But in fact, if anyone who's not a prepper who's watching this video, you already know you are a prepper. If you have a spare tire in your car, you're a prepper. You're preparing in case you get a flat tire. If you have insurance of any kind, you're preparing for the day that you may have to use that insurance. And being prepared in our world means having the things that you need in order to continue living and to continue providing to your family those things that they may need in case those things become unavailable at any given period of time.
Agreed 100%. And like you said, I think there is a bad name around the idea of prepping, just due to what has been happening in entertainment and stuff like that over the previous years. But now, ever since the beginning of the year 2020, it seems like more and more people are realizing that they should have been on board the whole time. So I think it's definitely a year where people who are of a prepared mindset can share that information more freely and not kind of have that stigma around what it is they're trying to do.
Sure. And one of the things that I've said about this health crisis that we've been going through for the last several months is that in a way it's been a good thing, because it has woken up the masses that, hey, listen, maybe it's a good idea to have an extra roll or an extra pack of toilet paper set aside, and an extra few cans of soup or stew set aside, just in case those things become unavailable. So in a way, it has awoken a lot of people, and I'm just hoping that when times get a little bit good again, that they learn their lesson and continue to prepare and stay prepared for the next crisis. Because I've always said crises have a beginning and an end. And eventually this crisis will be over. And what I hope is that people don't forget about what happened during this time, so that they will continue to stay prepared. Because, Matt, I've always said that the more people that are prepared is better for you and me. If my neighbors are prepared, then I don't have to worry about them coming and knocking on my door should something happen. Not that I wouldn't help, but it's better if more people are prepared. Because, if you remember the panic buying that was going on in the last few months, those weren't preppers that were panic buying. I
No.
was sitting on my couch watching the panic buying on videos. So those people that were panic buying were not preppers. Those were people that were not prepared. And, in some cases, there really wasn't, like hoarding or anything like that. When I looked at a lot of those videos, people were just buying the stuff that they normally buy. The problem is, or the problem was that everyone went out at the same time. Everyone went out at the same time to buy the same kinds of things at the same time, and that's what got our shelves empty. But the thing is
Yeah, our
that you
system's
have
not
to
set up for
remember,
that.
yeah, you have to remember that may happen again. So, take a few dollars, take a little bit of time, and just get prepared now. You don't have to have 10 years worth of food. Me personally, I think that a year's worth of food stuff put away is a great idea. All right, because that's what's been done for a long time. If you remember, well, not if you remember, you weren't alive back then, but back in the early 1900s, most people farmed, and the word prepper was not really a word that was used. Why? Because it was a way of life.
Yep.
Farmers had to make sure they had enough food stuff put away in case their harvest failed, so that it can get them through the next winter. So when people look at becoming prepared, look at it from that point of view, that all you're doing is putting something away in case you have a bad harvest. And what I mean by a bad harvest is anything. What if you lose your job? What if
Yeah.
the breadwinner in your household falls ill and can't work, or passes away? I had one of my community members send me an email, I don't know, 2 or 3 days ago, or maybe a little longer than that, a week ago or so. And she told me that this last month was a terrible month for her and her husband, because they had so many hospital bills and dental bills that, had they not had the preps put aside that they had, that they would have had to make a choice between paying the bills or eating. So they were able to pay their bills because they had preps put aside to get them through that tough patch. So, look at it that way. You don't have to be an extreme prepper. Just put away some food so you don't have to rely on someone else to feed you or your family should something happen, that would keep you from being able to go to the store and get the supplies that you normally need.
100%. And, self-reliance is definitely part of that way of life. It's about not having to rely on somebody else. And it's also about putting yourself in a position where your family can rely on you regardless of what's happening, So definitely a good way of looking at things. And I think that, one of the things that I look to your channel for when I'm trying to get motivation, or when I'm trying to be more well-rounded as someone who's in a prepared mindset, is, your payday preps. And I thought that was, a good topic to kind of discuss, because I do the same thing in the sense of every payday, which is a 2-week cycle for me. I go out and I make sure I stock up and I get more preps and I get more established as somebody who can provide, for their own. And I'm sure we have some differences on what we invest in on our paydays, but you are really good about putting that out there, every payday, making sure everybody knows, like, here's a good idea of things you can stock up on. And so you don't have to be one of those panic buyers. So what kind of got you started on payday preps? Was that something that you had to kind of get into a routine of, or was that something that just came naturally for you?
Well, you know what? To tell you the truth, I started doing payday preps after I started my channel. Prior to that, I just prepped on the whim. And it was just an idea that came to me because I kept seeing a lot of comments. I can't afford this. This is too much. So then I came up with a saying that I always say on my videos is, slow and steady wins the race. So I started doing the payday preps. I think I'm the one that came up with that name. I don't know, but I started doing the payday preps because I wanted to encourage people to prep on the cheap. And no matter what kind of a budget you have, you can prep on the cheap. Even if you only buy a 2-pound bag of rice, every payday, in 6 months, you're going to have enough rice to feed your whole family probably for 6 months to a year. So I wanted to show people that they can do it no matter what kind of budget they're on. And I wanted to encourage them and show them what I've been able to build up over the years, because slow and steady does win the race. If you just do a little bit every payday or every month, however, however many times a month or a year it is that you get paid, if you just do a little bit every time, it builds up. And I like to see it as a way of savings. You probably
Hmm.
know that I like to save. I like to save my excess wealth in precious metals because there's only so many preps you can have. So I like to see payday preps as a way of savings. What's a good way to save a lot of money over a long period of time? By being consistent. So if every single payday you go out and you put $10 in a box, in a couple of years you're going to have a good amount of money, right? Same thing with
Yeah.
food. Putting food away is just a form of savings, and I can attest to that. And any prepper that's been putting food away for the last year can attest to that, because this year food is a lot more expensive than it was last year. So had you
A lot
been
more.
doing that had you been doing that with your payday preps every payday for the last year, the food that you have now is actually more valuable as far as nominal value goes than it was a year ago, meaning that you could get less food today than what you would have been able to get a year ago when you started prepping. So I see it as a form of savings, and I see payday preps as just being a way to stay consistent. If you're consistent with something, you're going to achieve that goal. So if you're just starting out and you really can't afford it, when you go to the store to do your regular grocery shopping, just grab one extra item that you weren't planning on getting that week and just put it away in the back of your pantry or in a closet somewhere, and do that every time that you get paid. And you'll see that over time, that's going to accumulate, and you're going to have a very deep larder that you'll be able to take care of your family with should something like what we've been going through for the last few months happens again. It's really just common sense, Matt. And unfortunately, like we stated in the beginning, the word prepper or preparedness has really been, no justice has been done to that word for a variety of reasons. So if you don't want to call yourself a prepper, don't call yourself a prepper. Just call yourself a person that cares about their family and wants to make sure that in hard times your family is going to have what they need. Pretty simple.
Yeah, and honestly, that's kind of my same mentality on it. It's kind of like a savings plan. I look at it as the same way as somebody might finance a vehicle. You have a monthly payment, and you put that towards paying off that loan in order to have what it is you need to kind of keep progressing forward. And I feel the same way about preps. I don't necessarily buy everything all at once because I can't afford to. But if I want a
Right.
1 year food supply, I make that monthly payment or that biweekly payment, and eventually I pay off that 1 year food supply. So it works exactly the same way. And for myself, I know that ammunition is part of my payday prep. That's something where
Right.
every payday I go out and I buy a couple boxes because I go to the range regularly, and I like to kind of just resupply myself from whatever I might have previously used. And now that's definitely changed due to the shortage and the cost
Right.
of things and things like that. But having that routine has just kind of kept me continually growing in that category, similar to food, where every 2 weeks, even though I buy more and yeah, sometimes I use some of it, I still bought more than I use. So you just keep
Sure.
getting like a little bit more stacked away.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do want to say thanks to everybody who's here. I've been seeing in the chat there's a lot of familiar faces, so really, really nice to see everyone. Alaska Preppers here, in case you're new to the live stream, and if you don't know about Alaska Prepper, I'm not sure how you know about me, because he has an awesome channel with really good advice, solid food techniques when it comes to storing food long term, when it comes to actually eating and trying and using the food that he stores, sharing tips and everything with you when it comes to making sure that you can stock up and take care of you and your family. So if you haven't checked out Alaska Prepper, make sure you do. But you guys should already know who he is, in my opinion. So that's just how I feel.
Well, something that I thought about, Matt, is it's fine and dandy to stock up on all of the things that you need, but I've got a couple of tips for people that may be new to this. Make sure
Okay.
that you stock up on stuff that you use. Don't go out and buy fancy stuff like freeze-dried foods and all of these long-term storage foods. Although I like those kinds of foods, if you're just starting out, make sure that you just stock up your pantry with things that you eat, that you know that you like and that your family likes. And another thing is make sure that you know how to cook these things. Don't buy 100 pounds of rice and 50 pounds of beans and you've never cooked rice and beans. You don't even know if you like it. Make sure that you like what you buy. Make sure that you can cook what you buy and store away. And if look at different ways of cooking, different methods of cooking, of heating up your food. What happens if you live in an apartment where you have electricity as your source for cooking? What happens if the electricity goes out? Have different methods or different backups for each system that you rely on. Prepping is not just about putting food away. Prepping is about being able to maintain your standard of living while there's a crisis going on. And your standard of living relies on electricity. It relies on heat to cook with. It relies on having gasoline in order to put in your vehicle in case there's an emergency and maybe you may have to rush someone to the hospital. It relies on you just knowing basic first aid things and having, at the very minimum, a basic first aid kit. So there's a lot of levels to prepping. I like to concentrate on food because I've always said that everybody needs to eat. So, I usually talk a lot about putting away food and stuff like that. I do a lot of other videos. I like to do videos. I'm actually working on a video after I get off of here with you on what I like to call a prepper pantry cooking video, where I cook something, where I cook something from scratch with things that I took out of my prepper pantry. That way, if you do that, that during a crisis, you'll be able to still feed your family good food, instead of them digging into a Mountain House bag for a month or, ripping up an MRE. People think those foods are great, but try eating an MRE every day for a month, or try eating Mountain House every day for a month, right? So, I like to do those videos because I like to encourage people to go into their pantry and to start cooking with the things that they've put away for long-term storage. That way they are comfortable with cooking these things and preparing these items in case something were to happen. So you should always be going into your pantry and cooking the things and using the things that you got to be prepared.
No, I totally agree. And just going back on what you said about even just cooking rice and beans, if you haven't cooked rice before, it's extremely easy to burn rice. And you would think that something you cook with water wouldn't be easy to burn, but I can't tell you how many pans I have that have rice burn stains on them, because it's just something that.
Go ahead. I'm actually making a rice dish tonight. I'm actually making a Chinese fried rice.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I'm actually going to include like a 1-minute clip in high speed showing you how to cook rice, because so many people don't know how to cook rice over a fire. And that's something that you need to learn.
Definitely. And it isn't easy. It sounds easy in theory, but if you don't know what you're doing, it's way easier to screw it up than it is to do it right.
Right.
I will say that one of the things that comes up a lot with prepping and with our community is the idea of producing your own food, and producing your own calories. Now, I live in North Dakota, extremely cold state. You live in Alaska, very cold state. For me, at least right now in my situation where I'm actually renting and I'm in a temporary situation, I don't have like a garden and I don't have a big food production situation in my at my current location. Is that something that for you, is that something that's plausible where you are, or is the environment too harsh, or how does that work for you up there?
Well, back here, what I'm going to concentrate on, I'm actually almost ready to start my little homestead. I've been working on my property for a few years here, and I got a lot of work done to my land this last summer. And next year, the first order of business is to finish getting some of my land leveled out so I can start, working on my actual homestead, building a chicken coop, getting a garden going, things like that. Well, this year, for the first time, I grew some potatoes off my back deck, just in 5-gallon grow bags. And it was extremely successful. So I'm very encouraged. So now I know. So for anyone that's never done any gardening or anything like that, just try it one time. And you will be so encouraged to do it or motivated to continue to do it once you see the results. So just growing those potatoes really motivates me to want to plant a whole bunch of potatoes next year. And it's actually a very good plant that grows here are tuber. Potatoes grow very well here in Alaska. So it's something that I'm going to concentrate on, getting enough potatoes grown to last me throughout the year. Now, we can usually get at least one good growth out of like vegetables and stuff like that if you don't have in, what do you call it? Man, I always forget the name of that thing, a greenhouse.
Okay.
If you don't have a greenhouse, you can usually get at least one good growth of vegetables and things like that. So my goal next year is to get a greenhouse up, to, you know, do a full vegetable garden for the first time ever, so that I can get that experience, because we have to learn to fail. Because when you fail, uh-oh, my little kitty cat's coming up here. When you fail, you learn. So we have to learn to fail, and you want to get started as soon as possible. That way you can have 1 or 2 growing seasons to learn how to fail. Because here in the next couple of years, I think that we're going to have a really serious food shortage. This is nothing what's going on now for what I believe is coming, you know, due to many reasons, be it the weather, be it a geopolitical, you know, stuff going on, whatever reason is right. I try not to concentrate on the reason why things happen. I try to concentrate on what we can do to overcome the effects of those things happening. So yeah, up here, you can actually have a very nice garden. I've seen a lot of people have really nice gardens. So I'm really excited for next year when the snow melts for me to start doing that kind of stuff. And I'll be updating everyone on my video as I go along. But we'll just have to see. What can we call it? And you know what? Like this year, for example, I learned a great lesson. I learned that if you plant cabbage a month too late, you're not going to get the cabbage. I've got some cabbage plants out there that I planted about a month too late, and I'll be lucky if a head starts before we get our first frost. Thank goodness we haven't gotten our first frost here where I live. Some other parts of Alaska have, but where I live, we haven't gotten our first frost. Probably in about 5 days or so we will. But I'll be able to cut those off and at least use the leaves to cook with them. So I learned that this year. I also learned that if I would have planted my potatoes about 6 weeks earlier and harvested them about 2 weeks later, that I would have probably gotten double or triple the yield that I did. So it's all about learning from your mistakes and growing with that knowledge so that you can feed yourself. I think I answered your question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, you did. And honestly, you know, it makes a lot of sense because you have to fail to learn because it's the greatest teacher. And gardening and growing your own food isn't really an option for everyone. So what I like is that, you know, you give everyone the information that they need to store food or to, you know, acquire food and put it away properly, because not everyone can have access to, you know, a renewable food source. And I think that's really valuable. I would say most people don't have the ability to grow enough food to have enough for them and their family to be well fed, you know?
Well, you know, people need to understand too that every crisis is not the end of the world. I've always said that a crisis always has a beginning and an end. All right. Some crises last longer than others. Right.
Yep.
So what being prepared is to get you from the beginning of that crisis to the end of that crisis. All right. I like to say that preparedness is just a gateway to self-reliance. And then self-reliance is just a gateway to self-sufficiency. So by being prepared, you can get through the crisis. By being self-reliant, you can actually provide yourself most of the things that you need to survive. And then by being self-sufficient, you and your community can probably rely on each other to provide yourselves with all of the things that you need by using each other's skill sets to come up with whatever it is that that community needs. So for example, maybe I know how to fix shoes. Well, I can trade my shoe fixing or my cobbler skills, right, with someone over there that has a whole bunch of cabbage, because they know how to grow cabbage really well. So once you're self-reliant and you have a community around you, you can become self-sufficient within your community. I don't believe that anyone can be self-sufficient, because self-sufficiency means that you can provide yourself with everything that you need. Well, we can't. Right. We live in a world that we can't. If I want to go to town, or if I need to use my vehicle, I need gasoline. You know, yes, some people may say, well, you can make your own ethanol and all this kind of stuff, but I can't. You know, I don't know how to make gasoline. You know, you may need a tool that you don't know how to make, but somebody else may. So I don't think that anyone can really be self-sufficient. maybe at a very, very low level. I mean, if you go live in a jungle and you provide yourself with food and warmth and shelter, you may be able to survive. And I guess that's a form of self-sufficiency. But I'm talking about being self-sufficient and being able to uphold the standard of living that you're now used to, that you're used to living now. So, we don't want to just survive to survive. We want to survive to be able to thrive on the other side of that crisis. Well, how can you thrive on the other side of a crisis if you barely make it through? Right? So,
that's true.
I mean, that's how I look.
And if you don't have some form of community, what is on the other side of that crisis for you? Like you said, I think that's a good point that maybe we don't drive home very often, but the idea of self-reliance is important to, be able to take care of yourself if need be, but then having that community to rely on and network with in the interim is definitely very important, and I totally agree with you. I mean, somebody is a good hunter and somebody else is a good crafter. These are things that people need in any society. And that's why, that saying, it takes a village is so accurate. People really do need each other, because I'm not as good at some things as somebody else. That's just how this works. And I feel like we often do talk about being so self-sufficient to the point where it makes it sound like your goal is to be alone. But in reality, it's so that you don't burden anyone else in the community that you're trying to support, basically,
Yeah. I mean, everyone has a special skill that they're really good at. I love to cook. So, if it ever came to the point where we had to, get our community together, because the area that I live in is full of very good, self-reliant people, and I actually scouted out this area before I bought the property. I met some of the neighbors, and I was pretty much convinced that if something were to happen, I could actually rely on my neighbors. And that has proven to be true over the years, that I can rely on my neighbors to be at my behest or at my side at a moment's notice should I need their help. But then you have to return the favor and make sure that you're there for them as well. So, I mean, I think I lost my train of thought. Yeah. So if you rely on your neighbors, get to know your neighbors, get to know your neighbors, get to know, what their mindset is, what their ideology is. And even if they're not prepared, you can always talk with them, and don't push prepping on them, but plant seeds. Hey, John, what did you think about that storm they had down there in the Gulf Coast, last month or whatever, right? And yeah, imagine that going without electricity for 2 weeks. Yeah, I got a generator. Do you have a generator? Just in case something like that happens here. Just plant seeds. You don't have to push someone into doing it, because I'm telling you, Matt, it's the truth. The more people around your community that are prepared, the better it will be for you. Just think of it that way. For those of you that are listening that are on the fence about whether you want to start getting prepared or not, just think about it that way. It's going to be better for you if people around you are prepared. And it's going to be way better for your family if you decide to prepare for them.
And, one of the sayings that I hear out there quite a bit, but it kind of helps, prove the point of what, you're trying to say. Every, prepared person is one less marauder, and they say that because it's true, that it's one less desperate person who might have to make choices and decisions that they wouldn't have otherwise made,
Sure.
And that's, I think it's a good way to look at it, just to kind of help motivate people to, spread the word and work with their community,
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. All you have to do is ask yourself, what would you do for your family? What would you do for your family if your kids were starving and they hadn't eaten for a week? What would you do?
Right.
Just ask yourself, answer yourself that question. I don't need to answer that question for you. You already know what the answer is.
Exactly.
What would you do for your family? It's an easy question to answer, and once you answer that question honestly to yourself, well, there you go. That's the hard part. The hard part is waking up to the fact that you need to have some kind of preparedness put aside in case your family ever, falls into a situation for whatever reason. All right. I'm not prepping for the end of the world. All right. I'm prepping just to keep my family good for however long any crisis may last. I hear all these people saying that they're prepping for a nuclear war, stuff like that. That's fine. Prep for whatever you want. Just make sure you're prepped. Because it doesn't matter what you're prepping for. Guess what? You're going to need water. You're going to need food. You're going to need self-defense. you're going to need first aid, medical. You're going to need all that stuff no matter what you're prepping for. So you can say you're prepping for whatever you want. Just start prepping, because I feel that in the next few years, things are going to just keep getting continually worse than what they are now. And if you look back a dozen years or 10 years or whatever, ask yourself, haven't things been getting incrementally worse? Maybe not by leaps and bounds, but slowly and slowly, just a little bit at a time, getting worse and worse and worse. So ask yourself that. And if you can honestly answer that question to yourself, then it's a no-brainer. Go get a bag of rice, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't even call that the bare minimum. I mean, I'd say that's a step in the right direction. And it was interesting that during the panic buying and the initial onslaught of the crisis we're all dealing with, rice and beans became very scarce. So at least people have the knowledge that is easy food to stash away and provides a lot of calories in a dense way. So people have that knowledge. Now we just need to kind of help them understand why it is they decided to buy all those things when that time came.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to say,
can I say something real quick? Let me just say something real quick for it. I'm always I think I do a disservice to my VIPs, to the people that watch my videos all the time by saying this, but I like to say things to new preppers. All right, just a second, Matt. Yeah,
I try to feel it.
I'm on live, babe. I'll talk to you in a minute. My wife is out here trying to talk to you. I'm like, I'm live.
We all understand.
Matt, what was I saying, man?
You said you give your VIPs a disservice by constantly
because I often repeat things that I know they already know, but I like to put it out there because by chance maybe I have someone watching that's new, that's maybe considering it and just happened to come across my video. I like to tell them that, this is the time to prepare. There's nothing wrong. And, foods that you buy, you don't have to do all the fancy things that you see on TV for storage. And one of the things that I want to put out there, if you are not prepared right now, if you only have a week's worth of food in your, in your pantry or your fridge or your cupboards, whatever, you don't have to go out and buy oxygen absorbers. You don't have to go out and buy Mylar bags. If you just want to be prepared for a few months, a bag of rice will last in its original package for a long time. I would say for at least a year. As long as you store it, in an area that is away from rodents and that's not really a humid area, a bag of rice will last you 6 months to a year without you having to do any special storage. A bag of beans will last you 6 months to a year without you having to do any special storage. Buy canned meats that will last several years without you having to do anything special. So when you see a prepper channel where they're saying, I use oxygen absorbers and I use Mylar bags and I get 5-gallon buckets in this, if you are not 100% on board with all of that stuff, at the very minimum, go buy extra food that will last a long time in their original package. All you have to do is go out there. I did a payday prep a few days ago where I spent $180, and it was just basic stuff. But that $180 gave me 409,000 calories. For one person to survive on 409,000 calories, you're talking about 6+ months. Now, if you want to thrive on 409,000 calories, you're looking at about 4 months, right? Because if you just want to survive and be able to do just basic labor, just basic stuff and survive, nothing really strenuous, I would say 2,000, 2,100 calories a day. But if you want to thrive where you can eat enough calories to go out and garden, to go out and cut wood, to go and do all that physical labor that you need to do during a long-term systemic crisis, then you're going to need about 50% more of those calories. So for $180, you can feed yourself so that you can thrive during a crisis for more than 3 months, for like 4 months. All right. So it's not a lot of money. And people that use the money as a crutch is because what they're doing is they're telling themselves that they cannot do it instead of telling themselves, how can I do it? If there's something that is out of sight for you that you can't see readily available to you, don't tell yourself, I can't do it. Instead, tell yourself, what can I do to get this? Do I have to go and collect aluminum cans? Do I have to maybe get a part-time job for an extra 10 hours a week during a weekend? so that I can earn that extra, $100 a week or $50 a week that I need in order to put this stuff away. So, I get a lot of people that are always on there saying, I can't afford this. If you have a phone and you're watching this video on a phone and you have a service plan, you can probably afford a bag of rice every payday. I can't say that for sure, but you probably can.
It's about priority at that point,
Absolutely.
Where are your priorities? And I think that that's a good thing to touch base on, is the idea that you don't have to make that additional investment into preparing food storage. You don't, like you said. I mean, you have a rotational pantry of canned goods and rice and similar items like that. Non-perishables. You don't have to store anything in Mylar or buckets or any of that kind of stuff. You can literally just have it in your home and be good for a long period of time, and use it once that time comes to where you need to rotate. And it's I think a lot of people do get sidetracked on the additional cost that they're trying not to incur by stashing things away in like a long-term sense, rather than just being prepared for something more short-term.
Sure. And I mean, it also depends on what video you click on, because I like to throw, I'm all over the place with my videos. I'm all over the place. There's some videos, if you go back to my playlist, where I'm showing you how to prep for $19, for that payday prep. And I'm showing you that you can take this stuff and put it in 2-liter bottles and stuff like that. Really cheap payday prep. But then there's some videos where I'm showing you a $300 payday prep because I bought a whole bunch of, number 10 cans of freeze-dried this or that. So, it also depends on what video you click on if you're a beginner prepper. And the reason I do that is because I've acknowledged that, people of different levels watch my videos, and I'm sure yours as well. I'm sure that you have people that can probably go out there and, buy a year supply of Mountain House without a problem. But you also have people that can only maybe afford $10 a week. So I try to keep it, like that, going back and forth between high dollar items to, medium dollar items to low dollar items. That way I can be diversified in the people that I reach, because I want to be able to reach as many people as I can so that they can go out there and become prepared. Yeah.
And, I think that is something that we don't talk about very often in the community, but it's definitely something just worth mentioning. There is a difference too, based on your financial situation or what you do for a living. If you work a lot and you make money, you can utilize that money to be more prepared. But if you're someone who doesn't have the extra financial income, maybe you don't work as much, or maybe you just don't earn as much, then you get more creative about what it is you want to purchase. Like you said, why waste your money on, freeze-dried 25-year shelf life long-term foods if you don't have that financial capability, when you can buy, bargain food that will still last and get you through.
Sure.
And then the same thing goes with like the gardening and everything else too. If you don't have time to garden, that's okay, but just make sure you're at least investing in the additional food storage to cover the fact that you're not going to reciprocate your food supply,
Sure. And I mean, I did a video not too long ago trying to get people to let go of the stigma of foods that are past their best by date. That's another thing that people need to let go of that. Do your own research, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, go look at the USDA. The USDA itself states on their page that a can of product, a can of whatever it is, be it peaches, be it corned beef, be it stew, be it soup, whatever, that canned product will last indefinitely as long as the can is still in good shape, and it's being stored in a proper manner. It will last a very long time. So I did a short video just showing like 9 items that were past their best by date from 1 year to like 50 months, I think was the oldest one, so that I can show people, look, instead of throwing this stuff away, you can keep this stuff, eat it, and the money that you save because you didn't throw it away, use some of that money to prep. Because I know some people that if their foods are 1 day past the best by date, it's going in the trash. They won't even donate it. They'll just put it in the trash. And, unfortunately, if you do that, one day you may be wishing that you hadn't done that.
Well, and that's something I work with as part of my job. I work in the hospitality industry, and I work closely with the health department, and it's you have to go by the expiration dates on everything, and you can't make any excuses. Everything has to be thrown away the second it hits that date.
Right.
But it is common knowledge that food's not bad. It's just that it's past what you would be comfortable serving to somebody who's paying good money for something. But when it comes to a personal level, the food will
Right.
last much longer than what it's labeled at, and it is crazy how much you have to throw away. Yeah, it's unfortunate because like you said, Best Buy is not the same as expiration.
Right. Well, I before I joined the Army, I worked in the dairy industry for over a decade. And you can ask me pretty much anything about milk, and I can probably tell you. But I remember when we used to package milk, and we used to put a date on that milk, a Best Buy date on that milk. I'm not sure if milk has an expiration or Best Buy date. I forgot. But we always used to put an expiration date or a Best Buy date on that milk that was about 7 days shy of what we knew that milk would be good for. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I've used milk that was about 21 days, from the start of its from the manufacturing there, from the filling date. And usually milk is only has a stamp on it for like between 10 to 14 days after the day that it was packaged. But I've put milk in my fridge for 21, 22 days and it was still good. As long as you keep it, under a certain temperature in your fridge, it'll stay good for a pretty long time. Yep. So people don't know that. And that's what I tell people. Do your own research. Do a little experiment on your own. For those watching, if you are a milk drinker and you have milk in your refrigerator, go ahead and make sure that your refrigerator is below 38 degrees Fahrenheit and see how long that milk will last past its Best Buy date, in those conditions. That way you can know, hey, that milk is 5 days past its Best Buy date, but it's still good. And you won't throw it away. And that may seem like a small thing, but the thing is that the least amount of food products that you throw away, that's money that you're saving. All right, because you paid for that food. You throw it away, you're just flushing that money down the toilet.
Well, and it's also the oxygen exposure too. Like if you have a half drank gallon of milk, it's going to last much less than if you have a fully sealed brand new gallon, and that's something else, especially when it comes to canned goods and stuff. That's why they last so long, because there is no exposure of light, oxygen, or anything.
Right. Right.
So I want to say, if there's any questions that anyone has, or if there's any advice people are looking for, please leave them in the comments. I am seeing a few coming through. Like Bohos Info wants to know, if you can't legally carry a firearm, what's the next best thing? Bow and arrow. That's a hard answer, or a hard answer to give.
I like to tell people, when it comes to self-defense, get whatever works for you the best. Right. Everyone's different. If you can't legally carry a firearm, get whatever the next best thing is that you can get, that you're proficient with, that you can use. Don't be getting something that you know nothing about. If you're going to carry a blade of some type, make sure that you know how to use that thing. Make sure that you practice with it. Actually make sure that you can draw it out of your pocket or wherever you have it and actually put it to use in a timely manner. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is by practicing with it and training with it. So, just get the best thing that you can get that you can use. When it comes, I can't speak too much about, things that you can use for self-defense besides a firearm, because, I think that the firearm is the best tool there is for self-defense, with the exception of getting out of whatever situation you can without having to use it. I forgot who said it. It was a monk of some type that said the best form of self-defense is to run fast. And I believe that. Get out of a situation that may put you, in a bind where you may have to use, whatever kind of weapon you may have to use. That's the best form of self-defense. But if you're pushed to the edge and it's between you and someone else, well, I always said that pew-pews are the great equalizers, because it doesn't matter how big you are or how small you are or how big or small your contender is. that, that firearm is going to equalize both of you. And, I don't talk too much about firearms on my channel because I'm not an expert. And I know there's a lot of other channels that are really good at that stuff. And I really don't want to misinform someone just speaking through my opinion. I'd rather them go somewhere where they can actually learn something the right way than for me to just try to make a video about something just to make a video.
No, fair enough, And that's, like you said, it's more about just that personal preference of what's going to work best for you. Especially, it's hard to give advice on something like that because we don't know everybody's individual situation,
Right.
And I did see, let's see, there was a few other questions that I think we might have got bypassed because there was some fun troll activity going on in the chat.
Oh,
so.
Awesome. You're getting trolled. Hey, you made it, Matt. You made it. You're getting trolls.
yeah.
Maybe it's me getting trolls, but I can't see the chats.
Who knows? Yeah, I mean, we're like we should be getting trolls at this point, right? So, and I just made Urban Grandpa Prepper a moderator because he's a good guy and I trust him to do the right thing. So, but yeah, one of the things that I wanted to ask you while you're on here is, what if you were to say like your preferred method of food storage, like what is it? Would you say pressure canning? Like what do you feel like, at least personally for you, works the best and is something you do the most when it comes to wanting to store food long term?
Okay, so I like to do a cost analysis. I really don't have a preferred method. I like whatever works. So for example, I love to pressure can. Someone told me once, that that I should have been a cook or something like that, but I love to do that stuff, and that's why I didn't become a cook or anything like that, because I love to do it. I don't want to make it a job. But I love to pressure can. I like to do all that kind of stuff. But sometimes it makes sense not to pressure can. So like I love to make my own jellies. But if I can find jelly at the store that's cheaper than what it would cost me to make it, why in the world would I make it? So I would have to say that I really don't have like a favorite method of doing anything. I just like to do what makes sense and what's going to save me money and what's going to store the longest. Now, if you're asking me like what's my favorite storage method, well, there's two things that I like, two methods that I like to use my best for storage. So for meats, I like to pressure can, because if you've ever had pressure can meats, you'll know what I'm talking about. I think it tastes great. It lasts a very long time. I'm actually doing an experiment right now. I've got a quart jar of meatloaf that I pressure can in 2014. And that meatloaf is delicious, but I only have one jar left. I'm not going to open it till 2024, just so I can see what it tastes. It's tasted great every single time that I've opened it. I think the oldest one that I had from that batch only lasted up to like 5.5 years. But now I have one that's 6 years old. Is the only one I have left. So I'm going to save it for another, almost 4 years, 3.5 years or so, to see what it's going to be like at 10 years. So I have several jars in my pantry where it's like my little experiment spot where I put them down and I have the dates on them. And then I decide, okay, I'm going to open this one at 5 years. I'll open this one at 7 or 10, things like that. But you have to do, or my favorite method of storing meats is pressure canning. My favorite method of storing dried goods is Mylar bags, because I like to store them in bulk, because you get them a lot cheaper in bulk. A lot of people say, well, I'm not going to use a 5-gallon container of rice, in a month, but you may be surprised at how much rice you would use if you had to eat it every day. A 5-gallon container of rice is about 25 pounds. If you had to eat rice every day because you're using it as a filler food or a maintenance food, you see, I like to consider rice and beans and potatoes, like mashed potatoes and things like that. I like to consider them as filler foods or maintenance foods, because what they do is they allow you to combine them with a small amount of protein, and then it's enough for you to fill up, still be satisfied with the meal because you're full, and it's actually good food and it's really cheap. So I like to consider those filler foods or maintenance foods because they maintain your caloric intake. All right. So I like to store those things in 5-gallon buckets, But like I said, consider if you had to eat rice every day. If you eat 1 pound of rice a day, that's 4 servings. All right, 1 pound of rice is roughly 1,600 calories. Now all you have to do is put in another 1,000 calories of proteins and side dishes, and there you go. So a 5-gallon bucket of rice is not a lot of rice if you are eating it every day. And if you ever had to get into that 5-gallon bucket of rice because you're in the middle of a crisis of whatever type, then you're probably going to be eating rice every day, for maybe 1 or 2 meals a day. So
Yep.
it's really not that much to put away. So that's why my favorite method for putting away dry goods is 5-gallon buckets. Because if I ever have to get into them, I know that I'm going to have that 5-gallon bucket there. It's going to be good for a month to feed me and my family. And then next month, we'll go ahead and open another 5-gallon bucket. So that's how I like to put it away. So for dried foods, I like Mylar in buckets with oxygen absorber. For canning or meats and proteins, I like to do canning. I also can my own beans and stuff like that. One quick point one quick point on beans. A lot of people say, well, if you store away beans, they're hard. It takes a lot of energy to cook them. Well, one thing that I've said in the past is it's very easy to cook beans that are dry. The way that I cook my beans that are dry, I just pressure can them. I just do one pressure canning session with 7 quarts or 16 pints, and I pressure can beans. I put them in my pantry, and whenever I want them, all I do is I take them out and I mix them in with whatever meal I'm making, and I have my beans, and they're all cooked already. So you don't have to sit there and tend to beans for 2 or 3 hours cooking over a stove. Just pressure can them, take an hour and a half, and you have multiple meals in one batch. So that was my little pointer for the day.
Yeah. And that was something that I definitely wanted to ask you, just because I definitely feel you have that expertise, and it's something that I'm still like on my way in the sense of, learning when it comes to food storage, different things I haven't even tried yet or that I want to experience. So, and it's definitely what got me started watching your channel, is just to kind of like learn more of those techniques. So definitely good to know.
Have you ever pressure canned meats?
No, I haven't.
Man, I'll tell you what, pressure canning meat is easier than making jam. It's actually easier. Now, the first time you ever pressure can, and I hope you do, pressure can some beef. Okay. And then eat it. And then open it after a day and eat it. You're going to love it. I mean, it's really good. I mean, look at me. Do I look like I don't know what good food tastes like? You're going to love it. I mean, pressure can beef is delicious.
You know what? Like I said before, I'm in hospitality, so you can't trust a skinny chef, they say, right? So,
there you go.
We did have a couple super chats come in. Tyler
awesome.
He wanted to say thank you both for what you are doing for the prepper community. What would you both say is the one thing most people neglect in their preps? If you want to answer that, Alaska Prepper, that'd be cool.
I would say a water filter, a good quality water filter.
Okay.
You can have all the water stored that you want. For example, I have a system. Currently, I have a 1,000-gallon system that I have to fill on a regular basis because where I live, there's no water utility. So I currently have a 1,000-gallon water system. At any given point, let's say that water disappeared right now. I couldn't get water anymore. At any given point, I have at least 500 gallons of water, which from my family and myself, just on survival mode, just to survive, is about a month or so worth of water, all right? Or maybe more than a month, maybe a couple of months. I'm not going to do the math in my head. But just to survive is maybe a couple of months worth of water. Now I'm working on another system. I purchased a 2,500-gallon tank that I'm going to, get set up for next year. It takes a lot to set up a tank here in Alaska because I actually have to winterize it so that it can overwinter outside with water. So it actually takes a lot of work and a lot of money to get it winterized. Now, once I have that tank set up, at any one time, I'm going to have 3,000 gallons of water available. At any one time, anytime you want, I'll have 3,000 gallons of water, which will be enough for my family to live on almost like we live now, being able to do laundry and everything for like 6 months. All right. However, what if that water runs out? There could be water everywhere, but if you don't have a good water filtration system, you're not going to be able to use that water. And if you do, you may get sick and your family may get sick. Sure, I know that there are ways that you can make water potable as far as boiling it and stuff like that. But if you don't have a way to get all that muck out of the water, do you really want to be drinking water that's nasty like that just because you didn't go out and buy a $20 or $500 water filter? You can get them as cheap as $20 for a nice little Sawyer Mini, or you can go ahead and make your own Berkey system using Berkey water filters. Right? So I think that one of the things that a lot of people put to the back burner just because it's not the sexy part of prepping, right? You can look at a pantry and be like, wow, look at all that food. But you look at a water filter, you're like, what? This just filters water. Yes, you need water to live. So I think that no matter what your water situation is, no matter how much water you have stored away, you need to get the best water filter, non-electric water filter that you can afford. I think that's priority.
Yeah. And no, that's definitely a good answer. I mean, like water in general is highly overlooked, and a lot of people don't have even a gallon of water stored in their house. They fully rely on tap and expect that city water line to never stop running, So definitely a good one. I think if I had to choose another one that is a negligent area in most preppers, inventories, I would probably say like a savings, like a savings account of some kind, or having additional cash for those emergencies that come up. I think a lot of people, and maybe not any fault of their own, but a lot of people do have to live paycheck to paycheck, and it's hard to just have a stack of cash laying around. There always seems to be some reason you have to spend it, So I think that's something that we could all, we could all do better on that. I would say, even myself, Okay, let's see. We had Janky actually came in with a super chat also and said, why do you think silver will be useful in SHTF? Will buying be better than bartering? And I know you like precious metals.
I love silver. I like precious metals. I don't put away precious metals for SHTF. I don't. I put it away for savings.
Yeah.
That's what I put it away for. If we were right in the middle of a systemic crisis, meaning that the sky is falling, I am not going to sell my food stuff for silver. Period. Right? The reason I put away metals is because I believe, my opinion, I believe that after the end of a crisis, you need to have a vehicle in which you stored your wealth, where your wealth will not depreciate. So throughout history, it has shown us that precious metals keep their purchasing power. I don't store my excess energy. I like to call it energy as well. I don't store my excess energy or wealth in precious metals to try to get rich off of it. I put it away because it's the way in which I save my excess wealth. So there's only so many preps you can get. All right, there's only so much stuff you can store. Once you've stored everything that you can store, what are you going to do with your fiat currency? You can leave it in the bank and let inflation eat away all of those. I like to say that all of the dollars that you put in the bank or that you have, they're equivalent to all of your minutes and seconds. When you earn a $20 bill, that $20 bill is equivalent to 1 hour of your life. So why would you want to keep, an excess amount of fiat currency in a savings account when you know that every single day that fiat currency is being diluted through the power of inflation? And that dilution is the cause that your fiat currency is worth less and less every year, meaning that you can buy less and less with it every year. So every year that goes by, your paper dollars are worth less. I like to store my excess paper dollars in the form of precious metals. That way, one day, if I need to tap into my savings, I have savings in that form. But no, I don't put away precious metals to use during a crisis. Actually, I studied a little bit about what happened in Puerto Rico during Hurricane Maria, I think it was.
Yep. And
people were actually going to stores to sell their precious metals. But guess what? They were using it in the middle of their SHTF. The people that were buying the precious metals from the folks that were selling them were giving them below spot value for the precious metals. Why? Because those people had nowhere else to go. Right? So they were actually losing money by doing that. However, the people that had precious metals put away, they were actually able to go out and buy stuff. Sure, they were getting less money, less nominal dollars than what they paid for it, or than what it was actually worth in the market that day, but they were actually able to go get stuff with it that they needed. And I consider that being the free market. The person with that ounce of silver that traded it for a pack of toilet paper or whatever, that pack of toilet paper to them was more important to them than that ounce of silver. And that ounce of silver to the person who sold it to them was more important to them than that roll of toilet paper or whatever it is that they sold them. To me, that's the free market. I have no problem with it. But like I said before, I don't put away precious metals, and I don't do that for SHTF or even to use during the middle of a systemic crisis. I do it merely for savings because I feel that precious metals allows you to keep your purchasing power. Man, I'm sorry about that. I probably beat that question to death.
No, you're totally fine. And I think that the only thing I would add to that is if we're talking about it in the sense of SHTF, like a long-term crisis, I would just say that precious metals would probably last a little bit longer than, cash and especially digital transactions, at least in the beginning of some kind of a crisis. Like you said, even with Puerto Rico, like you were still able to go trade some silver or some gold in for commodities. Whether or not you got your full value, at least you were still able to make that trade versus not being able to use credit cards or not being able to use cash, So I would say I think they would just last a little bit longer, but I agree. I don't take my precious metals into account as some kind of a savings for after a crisis. I feel like it's just more of a good investment. And this is just a personal thing for myself, but I think some people can probably relate to this. When I buy silver, it feels better than putting money into a savings account.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still buying something that I like and that I want to hold, and it's money just being transferred into a different type of money, basically. But it's lower risk in many ways, like you said, And so for me, it's actually easier to save money by buying precious metals than it is to just leave it in a bank account and forget it exists,
Yeah, and it is easier to save that way because you have to take additional steps to. If I wanted to go and spend $1,000 on something right now, and I didn't have it in cash, but I had it in silver, I can't. I have to wait till tomorrow morning when the coin shop opens. Then I have to go get it and turn it into fiat currency. Then I have to go make the purchase. That extra step, when you're using precious metals as a form of savings, that extra step of having to go and liquidate it actually helps you think about what you're doing before you actually do it. Do I really need that M1A that I've been wanting forever? Do I really need that? Before I go and take my silver out and get my M1A. So it allows you to think. It's I think they call it the 48-hour rule or 24-hour rule. You have to wait, and between now and tomorrow, I may change my mind and I may say, wait a minute, I can probably get this instead of dipping into my silver. I could get this instead. So I think it's a great way of savings. I've pounded it into my daughter and my son's head ever since they were little, and thank goodness, they're doing it as well. I only give silver for presents. So whenever it's my daughter's birthday or Christmas, she knows exactly what she's going to be getting from me. Either silver or a little bit of gold.
A great way to do it, And I'm kind of just looking in the chat here, and I'm seeing some good input here. And oh man, Sean Pinn said, so agree with you guys. It's still buying, and it gives me that instant gratification I'm codependent on. and I totally understand that, Real quick, Mara Chafin, thank you so much for the super chat. And one thing I'll say is you guys don't have to do that. It's not one of those things here where we're like, if you want to get a question answered, you got to do a super chat. That's definitely not how it works. So I appreciate all the support. But if you want to take that money and spend it on, more food storage or precious metals or something like that can help better your preparedness, and please do that because, I think we're all in the same boat when it comes to trying our best to balance our expendable income and our preparedness. So, I really appreciate it. But always feel free to just better yourself and prepare yourself better rather than, put money towards that. So, and then I know there was one more from, hold on. Well, there's a lot all of a sudden. 1 second. Okay. And then Mara also said, thank you, Magic Prepper, for all your help and advice. You really helped me a lot. Well, you're very welcome. And like I said,
Awesome.
one of the things about YouTube, and yes, we all have our gripes with the platform when it comes to all the different interesting games that can be played on it. But it is a free platform still. Yes, there's ads, but that helps support the creators and the people who utilize YouTube as a platform. So we don't expect you guys to give us additional money if you don't want to or don't have the ability to. I mean, just don't worry about it. We're here to try to spread the word.
Hey, Matt, I just wanted to say this. Isn't that gratifying, though, when you get a comment like that you've helped someone? I mean,
it is.
It's addictive, isn't it? It's addictive. I love getting comments like that. I have to share this with your community. That way they know how addictive this can be as far as getting comments like that. When this health crisis first started, I think it was I got an email from a lady from one of our community members that lives in Denmark. And I think it was around February or March that she sent me this email. And it says something like this. I'm going to paraphrase it. She said, thank you so much. I started listening to you and, viewing your videos about 2 months ago. And here it is. I think it was in March. And she said, today our country declared a shutdown immediately. So they gave everyone 24 hours to shut down, where everyone was going to be locked up in their house. And she emailed me, told me, right now I'm watching the news as everyone is panic buying, and I'm in my living room with my 2 sons because I've been stocking up for the last 2 months since I started watching your video. Now that is what it's all about, reaching and teaching. And I just hope that everyone that has an experience like that, where they've benefited from some of us prepper channels, that they don't keep it to themselves. Teach your families, teach your neighbors, tell them, hey, like I said, plant seeds. And it's extremely gratifying to get those comments and those emails. And a lot of people may think that, oh, you YouTubers are only in it for the money. But trust me when I say this, it's more gratifying to know that you're helping someone just by you putting a video out on YouTube, like you said, as a free platform, than whatever money you get. When I think about that, I think about that email often. And the part that gets me is that she had 2 little boys. And I'm like, man, you know what? Those 2 kids, they're eating and they're okay. And it's great. But no, man, I think, and I just wanted to ask you, because I already knew what your answer was going to be. Yeah, you do a great job on your channel as well. It's all about waking people up, and also those that are already awake, encouraging them to continue to prep, and those that are experienced prepper, asking them for their help, with the beginner preppers that are new to your community. That's what it's all about.
Well, and honestly, I think that what's really nice is a lot of people have come to the community as of recent. There's a lot of new people to the idea of preparedness, and being able to share, basic info is something that really goes a long ways for somebody who's just starting out. And it's easy for people like ourselves to forget, what it was like when you first started prepping and when you first started getting into this whole dynamic of trying to, utilize resources for a later part of your life that may never come. And one thing I'll say is, I think most people on this platform and most creators that try to spread the word of preparedness probably started because of watching someone else on the platform doing the same thing. I know I watched a lot of prepper channels, and definitely was motivated by other people on YouTube and people who were spreading similar messages to start this channel, because, I've been doing this for a long time, but then, YouTube and watching people talk about these subjects is something that I did as well, because it really helped keep me motivated and helped me develop and become more well-rounded. And now it feels really nice to be able to kind of give back to what, got me started, which was, watching similar things to what we're doing right now, to be honest.
Yeah.
So let's see. There is a lot of good chat going on here. And I guess real quick, I just see here, Solitary Soldier Defined by One says, Alaska Prepper, where did you get your water tank and how many gallons does it hold? I guess, is there a certain place you like to get your water storage from, and how many gallons are you?
I got my water tanks in Alaska are like insulation. They're like gold, right? Insulation and water tanks, man. If you got that, you're in the loop, right? You're in the gang. So I got my water tank from Home Depot, and
Okay.
there's actually another place here that sells water tanks. The reason I got the water tank that I did is because Home Depot, at least here in Alaska where I live, they sell a 2,500 gallon water tank for like $1,200, and that's an excellent deal for us up here. So yeah, that's where I got my water tank at Home Depot, and I think it was like $1,199, $1,200. And as far as gallons per dollar, that is an outstanding deal. I've been wanting one of those water tanks for a few years, but my property behind my house was not leveled off yet, so I kept putting it off. And finally this year I went ahead and grabbed one because they only had like 2 water tanks left, and I'm like, I'm gonna get it now, even though I know I'm not gonna use it till next year. So I went ahead and grabbed one, and I'm glad I did.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because I was on Alaskan Ballistics channel last night on a live stream. We were just chatting about different, SHTF events and stuff like that could happen. And, he's really dialed into ammunition and ballistic loads and stuff like that. But he was saying that he couldn't find a refrigerator, like in Alaska. They said they were like gold, like you couldn't find one anywhere. Yeah. And he actually only got one because it was like canceled as an order that somebody else never picked up.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to find them nowadays. I think Billy and Dee from Frontier Preppers, they're my friends. I think they were able to buy a small refrigerator, but at a bit of an elevated price point than what they normally sold in the past. But I think they're starting to become a little bit more available, but still not anywhere close to before February or March.
Well, and that's something that I don't think we could have all planned on. Who would have ever wrote down in their possibilities journal, refrigerators and freezers are going to run out? I mean, it's just not something everyone planned for, but who really needs refrigerators and freezers when everything you have is pressure canned or Mylar bag sealed, right?
Well, the funny thing is that I had a spare. I had a second freezer, I had a second freezer, and I think it was around January or early February. I sold it because we didn't need it, and it was like a brand new freezer, and I sold it for like $50.
Oh man!
Just thinking I could have probably sold that for like 10 times more, but it was to a good friend that I sold it to, so I'm it's no big deal as far as that goes, but yeah, you just never know what's going to happen, and that proves your point that you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to be in shortages tomorrow. You just don't know.
No, and somebody did want me to ask you, WV Prepared Mind. Thanks again for moderating.
Hey, WV, how you doing?
Yeah, she's awesome. And if you guys don't know about WV, she has a great channel, and she does a lot of good news reports and keeps everybody up to date.
She's one of my moderators, Matt.
Yeah. Well, she knows how to do it. She's good at moderating. Everybody knows that. If you've been on YouTube long enough, she's moderated something you've been involved with, okay? But she wants me to ask you how you keep your water from freezing. So does it like a certain type of insulation you have to use, or what do you do?
Well, when I built my house, I sealed a portion of the bottom of my crawl space. So when I built my house, I sealed off a portion of my crawl space, and I keep that temperature controlled. So that portion of my crawl space under my house has all of my utilities, my pipes, it has my water tanks in it, and all that stuff. Now, the 2,500 gallon water tank that I have here that I haven't used yet, what I did was I went to the tank manufacturer that's here in Fairbanks. They're called Greer. And I went and started asking some questions. I know that they sell insulated tanks, but for you to buy an insulated tank from them is extremely expensive. So I went in there and I started asking about their insulated tanks, and I found out how they keep it from freezing in the winter. I found out how much foam they use and all that kind of stuff. So what I'll do with my 2,500 gallon tank is this actually going to cost me about another $600-700 on top of the cost of the tank for me to be able to get it winterized. And it involves getting some heat tape that you put around the bottom of the tank. It involves putting about 3 to 4 inches of foam around the tank, and then it involves
Wow.
more heat tape for the pump that you put in. So yeah, it's, there's a lot to do to it to make sure that it's going to, keep the water from freezing during negative 40-degree temperature. So yeah, that's what I plan on doing. Whoever wants to know how to do that, stand by. In about 6, 7, 8 months, once winter's over, I'll be doing that with the tank and setting it up, and I'll be showing it on my channel.
Well, that's good knowledge. I mean, that's something, you have to prepare for your environment. And here in North Dakota, it's the same story. If you're not prepared for things to freeze, then you're not thinking ahead,
Right.
Sean Pinn, thanks again. Thanks for the super sticker. I appreciate it. So let's see here. One thing that's popping up here in the chat, trying to find it again really quick. So Kay was just asking if we could recommend any other prepper channels, which I think is, and she listed, Urban Prepper, Canadian Prepper, our 2 channels. And, of course, there's so many good channels out there. And I can just tell you guys, some of the ones I watch regularly for me, I've been watching for a long time now. I've watched Full Spectrum Survival, more related to current events and news. And don't get me wrong, all the channels, we all have differing opinions when it comes to certain things. But, I like Full Spectrum Survival for keeping everybody up to date and posted on what's happening around the world, not just locally. I know that, Rudy, I know you've actually worked with Bear Independent, I believe, when it came to Grindstone Ministry, correct?
Yeah, I watch his daily brief every single day. And anyone that's not over at Bear Independent, great channel, go check it out. It's a great community they have over there. And what I really like about Bear Independent is their daily brief. Every day they do an intel brief, and they end it with a silver lining, meaning not, they don't only talk about bad stuff, but they end it with a silver lining. And then he always ends his videos with a prayer at the end. And, and people that want to stay for that, they can stay for that or not. But the information that he puts out is really good. Now, what I have to say about having a favorite prepper channel, I would have to say is that it doesn't matter. You should be dabbling in all the prepper channels. And some people, in the past, when I've mentioned prepper channels before, some people have said, I don't visit this channel anymore because he said this and this, and I didn't like that. Well, what I like to say about that is that we can always learn from someone, whether we like them or not. And what I like to say also is, even if you're watching someone's channel that you don't maybe necessarily agree with their ideology, with their political view, their religious view, or whatever, you can always take something good out of their video. Just don't take the stuff that you think is bad. If they're doing something that you don't think is good, just leave that behind and take the little nuggets of goodness that you can get out of that information and take that instead. So I encourage people to, be diversified in who they watch. I mean, if there's something about the channel that just is really against your morals and stuff, by all means, I understand. But I like to think that I can learn from anyone, whether they're considered a good person or not, whether they cuss or don't cuss, whatever. I don't really care. I'm not after the bad stuff. I'm after the good stuff. So if you can take some good out of watching a video that was 90% bad, just take the 10% that's good. We have to get away from the emotional, from the emotional knee jerks that we have. You start watching something and all of a sudden you start let's say, for example, you start watching a show and all of a sudden you find out that this person has different political views than you do. You turn it off. Well, you know what? You only took the bad stuff out of that video. You should have stuck around to see if maybe you can take the good stuff out of it. I mean, that's the way I see it. That's the way I see it, because we're all different. We're all different. I like to prep and I like to teach people how to prep. Why? Because we all have that one thing in common. We need food. We need water. We need shelter. We need heat. We need medicine. We need self-defense. No matter who you are, no matter what your political siding is, either right or left or center or whatever, no matter what your religion is, no matter who you call yourself or what you call yourself, you need those things in order to live. And that's what prepping is about, is to keep you alive until you make it from point A to point B to the other side. I mean, it's really simple. It is.
Well, and you know, it's one of those things. You know, you go from you know, somebody as, you know, kind of fiery as like angry prepper, and then you go to somebody very humble like asymmetrical preparedness, and it's I find great information from all different types of channels out there. You know, like it's really cool. You know, and what I will say about anyone who's asking about other channels or you know, recommendations is feel free to start your own channel too. The network that you're able to build and the community you can build on this platform with other like-minded people out there is insane. You know, and like I would have never thought I would, you know, have conversations with Rudy, you know, other than just watching his videos and commenting and hoping one day he might, you know, respond. But here I am, you know, talking with him in a live stream right now because of what this community comes together to do, you know, when it comes to networking. So if you're considering starting a channel, do it. You know, it's been a great experience.
Yeah, I like to mention every once in a while that the more the merrier. There is plenty of room on YouTube for another million prepper channels. You know, and I think that the more the merrier, because the more people out there putting out the word, hopefully the more people that will hear it. So whereas some people may never have my channel come across their, or my videos come across their recommendations, someone else's videos may come across their recommendations, and it never would have had they never started that channel. So, I mean,
100%.
I would say that just only if you're really interested in prepping. If you're going to start a YouTube channel, it should be something that you really like to do, something that is like in your blood. Prepping is in my blood. The reason prepping is in my blood is because I love my family and I don't ever want to see them suffer. So it's very easy for me to do what I do, to talk about what I talk about on my channel, because I'm doing this to inform other people, because I'm sure they love their families too. And I want to make sure that they're prepared for their families just in case something happens. But if you start a YouTube channel, it doesn't have to be about prepping. You know, it can be about anything. Just make sure that it's something that you're really into. And if I had to give one piece of advice is don't ever change. Don't ever change because of what people say in the comments. Always be true to who you are. Stay who you are. And if people don't like that, then there's 7.7 billion people in the world. Someone else will click on your channel, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that are interested in what you have to say. All you have to do is find them, and slow and steady wins the race. You know, that's what it's all about. As soon as you start changing who you are and how you do things because a couple of people don't like what you're doing, then it's not going to become a blessing anymore. It's going to become more of a job, and then you're going to hate it. I mean, that's my advice.
You have to,
go ahead.
You have to put the time in. You have to get through the part where you're not very good at it, you know?
Sure, absolutely.
You know, that's part of the deal too. You can't expect to come out of the gate swinging and be, you know, #1 in the search ranking just because you thought it was good.
I have no idea why I have 60-something thousand subscribers, because my videos are terrible. I mean, have you seen my videography lately? It's terrible, but you know, I have people that are awesome people. I love my community members, man. I hate calling them subscribers, because you know, it's like they're part of my family. You know, I love my community members, and I said a long time ago, hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is about as good as these videos are going to be, because I'm a one-man show, you know, and I don't have high-tech equipment. And if you need high-tech equipment to tell someone that they need to prep, then I guess you do, but I don't. You know, you're going to hear my voice telling you the same thing, whether I have $1,000 camera or $110 phone, which is what I'm on right now.
Well, and you know, that's what it comes down to. You know, it's because the information you give is solid and it's advice that actually helps people. So that's what really helps. You know, that's what gets you further ahead in the world of YouTube creation, I guess. You know, when you're actually providing something that people find valuable, and that's what you do. So the video quality, it doesn't even matter compared to the quality of the content. You know. All right. Let's see. Somebody asked what part of the country I'm in. North Dakota. So, you know, we are cold people, Alaska Prepper and I.
Well, it's about 45 degrees right now, and I'm in a T-shirt. This is like spring to me. Yeah, this is awesome.
Oh, well, you know, when I lived in California, it would be 50 degrees and I'd wear a jacket. And now after being in North Dakota for a few years, same story. I'm in a t-shirt until it's like 15 degrees.
Yep, there you go. Yeah. Anything above 10 or 15 degrees Fahrenheit, man, it's nice. And I'll be outside in t-shirts and shorts.
All right. So, we've been on for almost an hour and a half now. Definitely, I feel like it's been a really good chat. I feel like we've definitely discussed quite a bit of topics, especially in the realm of, food storage and payday preps and all the good stuff, I just wanted to ask the chat if anybody had any other questions or anything, if you want to just try to get those in real quick before we start to wrap things up here. Is there any kind of a message or anything you want to share with everybody before the end of the chat tonight, Rudy?
Not really. I mean, I just want to let you guys know, first of all, man, I want to thank you very much for doing this. I mean, like you said, an hour and a half almost has gone by, and it's just flown by. And the reason for that is because we're in good company. That we have the community members on the chat, hanging out with us. And I already knew, I mean, you and I had already talked a few times, before today, and I already knew that I was going to have a good time talking to you because you're a good person. So if there's any of my community members out there, and I can't see the chat, so I'm sorry about that, but if any of my community members are out there, go ahead and subscribe to Magic Prepper. I mean, his mission is the same as mine. We have different ways of doing things. Magic Prepper does things a little different than me, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean, that it's better. It doesn't mean that it's worse. It's just different. And that's the great thing about YouTube, that you can expose yourself to different ideas, to different ways of doing things by just watching different channels. So don't stay don't keep a narrow mind as far as what channels to look at. If you're not subscribed to Magic Prepper, by all means, click on the subscribe button and support him. Support him by watching his videos, because, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important, that you guys don't just subscribe, but watch the videos as well, because it really helps the content creator. And not only that, it really keeps us motivated to continue to do, content and to put it out there. And I think that prepper channels is probably one of the most important video types that there are out there, because we're doing this to try to reach as many people as we can, because in the end, I truly believe that the more people that are prepared, the better that is going to be for me and for you. So yeah, thank you very much, man. I truly do appreciate it. How's the new baby doing, by the way?
Oh, she's great, man. She's great. So
good.
Yeah, nice and hefty,
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's a pretty big baby, so there's no complaints in that department,
That's great. No more babies for us over here. So
yeah,
we're done. We're done with that. Are you kidding me? Look at this beard, man. Your beard is still black. Mine is white.
I found one white hair like right here, and I was like, oh, here we go.
No.
So I'm starting up here. That's the thing, Yeah, and honestly, I would say that the same goes for you, Rudy. If anyone isn't subscribed to Alaska Prepper, please go check his channel out. Get some excellent food storage advice. Get some excellent preparedness advice. I don't do tons and tons of food videos, and that's just some of the differences of our channels. So if you really want to know, how to prepare ghee and how to pressure can and all those things, Alaska Prepper has that information for you. And I think it's very important and valuable, and I watch his channel for that reason. So I would hope everybody else would at least give it a shot as well. And if there's any questions, I'm looking for a couple. I know somebody was asking me more than once today if a 1911 was good enough for home defense. Look, man, if you want a 1911, go for it. I love the platform. But if I had to choose one thing, and I was either going to buy a 1911 or something comparable, I'd probably still get something with a double stack magazine and have more rounds. So that's just me. So
can I say something, Matt?
Yes, sir.
People ask me that question a lot, and this is what I always say. Whatever firearm you are comfortable with, that you can get, that you can become proficient with and or are proficient with, that you can get ammunition for, that's the firearm you should get. Because me personally, I like, don't kill me over this, Matt, but I really like 9 mil, and I
Hmm.
also like 40. Right? For some reason, the pew pews that I have that fire those two different calibers, the firearms that I use with those calibers, I love them. I love shooting them. I love training with them. I like their feel. I've used 45s before, and it just wasn't for me. So whatever firearm you are comfortable with, that you are proficient with, and you can get ammunition for, that should be the firearm that you decide to use for whatever defense. However, if I had to say one, if you can only get one firearm, that's it. You can only afford one, and that's it. I would say get a shotgun, because a
Well,
shotgun is very diversified. You can get different rounds for it, where you can go hunting for birds, for squirrels. You can go hunting for big game with a shotgun, because it's very diversified as far as how many different types of rounds you can get for it. So if you can only have one and that's all you can have, my opinion is get a shotgun. However, if you can get whatever you want, get whatever it is that you feel the best with, as far as handling it, as far as field stripping it and cleaning it and repairing it and getting to know that firearm like the back of your hand. All right, that's what I would say as far as what's the best kind of firearm to get for home defense.
and to tag on top of that, just keep in mind something that I do regularly, and especially if you're new to firearms ownership, don't be afraid to buy something, try it, and eventually trade it in for something else.
Yeah,
Keep trying new platforms until you find yourself the
absolutely.
most comfortable situation. And firearms don't lose much of their value. They're not like vehicles where you drive them off the lot and lose
Yeah,
40% of
not
their value.
nowadays. Not nowadays
Definitely
they
not
don't. Huh?
nowadays,
Or you
right?
know
So
what? Another thing, Matt, that I've recommended to some commenters before is there are ranges where you can go where they'll rent you a firearm.
yep.
So instead of buying one and then finding out that you don't like it, you can go to a range where they rent out different types of firearms, and you can go ahead and rent them out for like $9 an hour or something like that. Go shoot them, and you can decide which one you really like or what kind you really like before you actually make a purchase. So that's another way to go.
Yeah, and just in case anybody's considering that, because there is a lot of people that are on the edge of buying their first firearm lately. Just to keep in mind, if that's something you want to try to do, to go rent a firearm and try a bunch of different types of platforms out, just be aware that you need to have somebody with you most of the time, because there is a situation with shooting ranges where they've had people utilize that loophole to acquire a firearm for much less than the cost of one, and then use it,
Oh,
unfortunately, on
yeah.
themselves.
Oh
So
no.
there is something just to keep in mind in case that's something you're looking to do. You want to make sure you have someone with you, so that way the range will be comfortable lending a firearm out to you if you don't currently own one. If you own one already and bring it with you, then they usually will rent it to you because you already have one anyway.
And the last thing that I'll say on firearms, Matt, I'm sorry about that, Matt,
That's
is
all
train.
right.
You need
Yes.
to train, ladies and gentlemen. You need to become efficient with that. And in the military, they call it muscle memory. Right? In the military, here's an example of muscle memory. Have you ever been driving somewhere and you drive to work instead, and you weren't supposed to be going to work?
Oh yeah.
I've done that
Oh
a
yeah.
couple of times, because the path that I was taking to Walmart is around the same route that my job is. And my muscle memory, my brain I was drifting off, and my brain just took me to my work instead of going where I was supposed to be going. Muscle memory is what helps you, get through an intense crisis. Uh,
Yep.
you know, you can ask this to anyone who's been in a firefight or something like that. They say everything's in slow motion, and they don't remember doing this. They don't remember pulling their firearm. Why? Because they were doing it out of instinct, and they didn't have to think about it. So once you've pulled that gun out of your holster 1,000 times, and you've drawn it out of your holster, when you have to do it for real, you're not going to have to think about doing it, and you're going to do it the right way. So make sure that you train. And in addition to that, it's just a responsible thing to do.
Right. And it's funny. You can't see the live chat, but failure to prepare has been saying multiple times throughout the chat. get firearms training. Don't just get a firearm, get training.
Absolutely.
So, and
Absolutely.
they've been saying that over and over again. So I just thought it was funny you mentioned it, and I know you can't even see that that's what they're commenting.
All good.
So, yeah. Well, look, but I know we don't want to spend the next 3 hours here, so I think we could probably start wrapping it up. But I would just want to say, like, thanks again, Rudy. I know you're a busy guy, and I know that we all have a lot going on in our lives. So anytime, someone's willing to take some of that time out and jump on a live stream and chat for more than an hour, to try to help out the community, I just really appreciate it. I think it's awesome that you're willing to do that. So I appreciate you coming on.
Man. It's my pleasure, man. And just in case you didn't know, I'm officially retired from the rat race, so I'll have a little more time on my hands now.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear, because I am about to end my mandatory quarantine, so I'll have less time. But it's been good while I've had some time to jump on live streams and do some of this, so I've really enjoyed it. But,
this is really not work for me. I mean, I honestly, for the last hour and a half, I've had a blast chatting away. So this is not work for me. This is just hanging out with a friend, and hopefully somebody will watch this video that maybe is new to prepping or is considering prepping, and they'll start prepping. That'll be like the cherry on the top.
I agree.
So, whenever you're in good company, time goes by quick. So I truly do appreciate you inviting me. And thank you very much to your community members that joined in. If there's anyone here from the Alaska Prepper community, thank you guys for joining in. I truly appreciate your support, whether on my channel or this channel here. So thank you very much. Before I leave, I just want to say that I hope you guys all have a good evening. Be safe out there. Make sure you love on your families. And many blessings to all of you.
And thank everyone so much for joining in. And hopefully we'll get some more of these live streams going soon. Any questions you have, obviously comment, and make sure you go check out Alaska Prepper's channel. It's definitely worth your time. Trust me on that one. So, Rudy, if you want to stick on just for a little bit after the broadcast, that way we can chat for a minute. And then thank you, everybody, so much. And I'll just say, as kind of my call sign, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper and Alaska Prepper.
All right. Bye, guys.